Tim is the founder and president of Bloom Center for Municipal Education. Home to one of North America's most respected training programs for elected officials and municipal administrators. With over 27 years of hands-on municipal experience, including roles as Municipal Finance Manager, General Manager, Chief Administrative Officer, Tim brings practical expertise, deep insight, and unwavering commitment to the advancement of municipal government. Under Tim's leadership, Bloom has built an extensive online education platform featuring over 100 on-demand webinars and full-length courses in municipal finance, leadership, governance, ethics, and strategic planning. Widely recognized for its accessibility, quality, and real-world value, the Bloom Education Program is considered one of the best in North America. It serves thousands of professionals every year in helping municipalities build internal capacity, enhance decision-making, and fostering strong leadership on all levels. Beyond education, Tim leads a highly regarded municipal consulting practice, supporting strategic planning, tax strategy development, financial policy creation, governance reviews, and code of conduct investigations. His guidance has influenced more than $2 billion in capital investments and over $4 billion, $2 billion and $4 billion in operating budget decisions. Tim is widely known for his passion for municipal government, his unique and reliable perspective, and his ability to inspire through motivational presentations. His sessions energize audiences, challenge conventional thinking, and equip municipal leaders with the tools and confidence they need to thrive in today's complex public sector environment. Please welcome Tim.
Good morning, everybody. I know it's not morning, I'm just trying to get your attention. So now that I have your attention, I just want to start off by saying thank you for having me. A little bit just about me and something I'm very proud of. I'm just like you. I was a municipal administrator myself, CAO, 3 times in Alberta for the town of Bruderheim, my favorite job of all time, town of Redwater, and the town of Lonaway. I was also the general manager of community practice services for City of Spruce Grove, and I was a manager in finance for a number of years. So I've kind of been around for a while, and I can prove it. I'm only 27 years old. Look at what this business has done to my face. All kidding aside, it's a beautiful business, one that I love very much, but one that I also know brings great challenge. And I'm actually very, very nervous today for a number of reasons. I don't usually get nervous presenting anymore, and it took me a long time to get there, but I'm nervous today, first because my son is here today. So I'm dragging him around with me. He's on summer holidays at university, 4.0 grade average, by the way. Anybody's looking, get him but it's a real honor to have my son with me today, and of course it's a bit nerve-wracking to have him watch me present because he'll be critiquing me all the way home. The second part is as I was looking for my presentation last night, getting ready, I couldn't find it on my computer. Crazy. So I actually have created this presentation from scratch. I was up till 4 in the morning. It's all fine, no problem. It's all good, it's all good. Somebody asked me, how can you present this when you just finished it? And I said, vodka and orange juice. I feel fine, don't worry. The third part is, last night I had the pleasure of sitting with a few of you, and the question I always ask administrators that I meet is, first, how's things? How are you feeling? How's your job? Do you like it? And then the one that really to me hits home is, how is your counsel? And last night I was very happy to hear, on the most part, my counsel is excellent, they're great. And it wasn't one of those, my counsel is really good, it's excellent. It was actually sincere. And that made me feel really good. And I will say this, in my, I guess, in my history and talking with a lot of administrators, on the most part, usually councils are pretty good. But on occasion we have those tough ones. And the reason why I'm nervous today is that I know that there's probably somebody out here today, one of you, that is feeling stressed, that is feeling not appreciated, maybe even to the point of maybe feeling a bit abused. And for that one person, maybe two in the audience, hopefully some of the things I'll tell you today will resonate with you. Because I really believe that what you do as a job and as a vocation and what you'll do in your career is very, very special. You will get the snow off the road to get kids to school. You'll get people to work. You will help support safety in your community through fire services. You will see projects like recreation facilities sprout out of the ground that will create memories and value for people every day for decades. And for that, nobody's going to build a statue of you and nobody's going to remember you. But all kidding aside, what you do is create value for people each and every day, and that's very special. But at the same time, I know how hard your jobs are. So I'm hoping to provide you with a few nuggets today on the council-admin relationship, keep you energized, and then I'll put you to sleep with financial statement disclosures and financial secrets later. So now, anyway, you know who I am. Here's the thing. When it comes to considering the council and administrator relationship, it really comes down to culture, positive culture. Trust, how you feel about each other. Communication, engagement. You want to really think about what we have when we work on that relationship is we're working on the culture within our municipality. And the one thing is if you have good culture and you focus on culture and cultivate it, culture will transcend councils. One thing I've seen many, many times, and this is when I worked in Saskatchewan County, I worked for a great administrator, one of the best CAOs I ever worked with, well, the best I ever worked with. I learned a lot from him. Colonel Bill Sutherland. He was the colonel in the Canadian Armed Forces. We all thought when he started working as the CAO at Saskatchewan County, we'd all be marching at work and everything else. And realistically, he was one of the kindest, most soft-spoken, and caring leaders I ever worked with. And the thing that he cultivated the most was it was always about culture. Care for each other, self-policing within the organization about how we treat each other, and he held that with us as staff, but also with council. And what we saw was a transformation with our council when Bill was there, and we saw council all of a sudden as a team acting kind with us, self-policing them when they actually got angry or maybe one of the elected officials got frustrated. We were good with criticism, but not anger and you know, what we would call over-criticism, those types of things. So Bill was always cultivating that. And I can still remember I'd walk from my office, I'd go down the stairs as manager of finance at the time, and they had these offices, and they were glass doors, and so you could see through the offices, and at least once every 2 weeks, Bill would be in there with council, very casually, just having a chat, and I knew it had likely had something to do with how are we doing, how's our culture going, and he would police them. I found out later about any issues that they had with staff. If there was any negativity of staff, any negativity between each other, whatever it might be, he was always working on culture. So one of the key things that we have to consider is always, as great administrators, is the culture side. The second side of it is process. So when we start thinking about that council-admin relationship, process is pretty darn important. Code of conduct bylaw. Maybe a CAO or administrator bylaw. And one of the biggest things in the CAO performance appraisal process, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. You want to make sure that you can blend positive culture with process. That results in high-functioning municipalities. And it really starts with the council-administration relationship. I can't stress that enough. So, as we move on, why this relationship matters is the cornerstone of success. In the end, what are we there for when we're in municipalities? What do? We basically, for lack of any other way of putting it, we provide quality life for people each and every day. And we do that through services, through snow clearing, through fire services, through fixing potholes in the roads, whatever it might be. It is about providing quality of life for people. The best memories I will have on my last day will be remembering watching my kid play hockey in a cold rink in facilities across Alberta, because I was a hockey dad and I loved that. And those were municipal facilities. That's memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. I was able to get to work because of the snow clearing that occurred. I was kept safe at night by our fire and our police services. So quality of life is key, and so that's why this matters. But the key thing is it's really making sure that it's about relationships. And one of the challenges we have as administrators, and here's one of the key things as a takeaway, is we're there to facilitate change. And that is one of the hard things administrators have. Why? We as administrators often are there to be the gatekeeper of policy, a procedure, this is how we've always done it. I've never met an elected official that actually ran on a platform is, I'm running on a platform that I'm going to change nothing. Right? We don't see that very often. And so when they come in, they're what we call disruptors. They're there to make the change. They're there to challenge us and say, we want to see improvements. And sometimes as administrators, what do? We take it personally. What do you mean you want to change the way that we cut the grass? What do you mean you want to change the way that we clear the snow? What do you mean you want to change the way that we actually react with the public? Well, we do a great job, and we probably do. And sometimes that requires orientation and support, but maybe sometimes the councils are right. So one of the key things that we want to be recognizing when we start thinking about the relationship is that we're there to help facilitate change. We have to have a strong relationship. We're there for strategy, operational alignment, all those fun buzzwords on this slide. Remember, I was doing this at 4 in the morning, and we have to always consider the relationship. It's all about the relationship. So if you're not good with relationships, learn how. Learn how. I mean, when I started working as a CAO, I was a finance manager for about 8-9 years, and I went out to the town of Bruderheim, my first CAO administrator job, and I realized in the first month, I'd worked in municipal government for about 9 years, and I really knew very little about what it was like to work in a real municipality. Meaning, all of a sudden I had to worry about council meetings, I had to worry about council dynamics, I had to worry about the public complaining, I had to worry about snow. I was like, God, I wish I could just go back to my computer in front of a spreadsheet. But all kidding aside, I recognize, most importantly, that as an administrator, my job was about relationships, because the calls I got most from was from the council members, right? So we want to make sure that we work those relationships, or what happens? We end up with dysfunction, turnover, political tension, and this is something that bothers me again. Remember, sometimes it is time for a CAO to move on, or administrator to move on, but I'd say that most of the time, things should get worked out, and it doesn't happen enough in our business, and my friend paid a price for it, and many others do as well. So we want to make sure that we work on those relationships to avoid that turnover that doesn't need to happen, that political tension. And I'm sure some of you in here today, maybe you get a little nervous about your job because maybe some council, the way they're reacting to you, or the way that the council is treating you now. And those are the things that you need to be ready for, prepare for, because again, it's a challenge, but you can work through it through good relationship building with your council. I'm going to show you a few things on how to do that. So when we think about the council roles, one of the big things, and I know that you know about the admin council roles ad nauseum, because again, it's the first things that we learn, but where's the thing that I like to think of the council as? Everybody asks me, why do you put a picture of a conductor in front of a band on this slide? And the reason I do is when I think about the council relationship, and I think about council, I just think of it as this: is there a conductor sitting in front of the band, and they're waving, telling us which way we should be going. What should we be doing? Why should we be doing it? What's the priorities? What's our strategies? What are we supposed to be doing? They don't need to learn how to play the tuba. They don't need to learn how to play the trumpet. They don't need to learn how to play the drums. That's our job. But we have to respect them and let them know that they are the leaders. And if you can empower them and speak in that language, you're starting to build a relationship. You're starting to work the relationship a little bit, right? When councils get frustrated with administrators, a lot of times it's because some administrators, I'm not saying any of you in this room, but there's a couple of you, begin to get political. They begin to take the form or maybe the role of council on occasion. They begin to have an opinion, and that's when things really start to break down. You don't want that to happen. And so when you're really thinking about, again, the sides, I know you know that, yes, they're there to review, evaluate, they're there for the what, the why, we're there for the how and the do. These are the obvious things. We just want to recognize that they're the leaders and they're conducting us. And if you put it to them that way, a lot of councils I work with, and I work with a lot of them these days, through mediation, challenges with their sales, challenges with their staff, when I put it to them this way, they really get it. Go, yeah, we are the leaders. That's the way we have to think. And so keep it simple. So remember the roles and make sure that you work with your council and make sure that they understand that role and have respect at all times. The thing I noticed about Bill, and later on another sale I worked with at Spruce Grove, which was Doug Lagore. Can everybody hear me okay? Just kind of wondering if this thing's working. Okay, good. The thing that I really noticed about these two seasoned CAOs that taught me so much, they were fantastic in the relationship with councils, and they showed massive amounts of respect for council at all times. And what happens when you show somebody respect? What happens? You show it back. If you show respect, it's reciprocal. It is an absolute known in all kinds of studies. When you mirror somebody, they start to mirror you back. So you got to give to get, right? And remember, your job is to be a bit strategic in your approach. And you're doing this for yourselves, but you're also doing it for your team. As administrators, you have a great responsibility. Remember, you're not in charge of people at work. You're in charge of the care of the people at work. And so one of the biggest things that I look at when I'm an administrator is I got to take care of my people. And the first way that I do that is making sure that we have a great relationship with the council. I'm making sure I'm protecting my team. Don't take it wrong if your councils criticize your team as well. Don't take it wrong if they criticize maybe services that we're providing or the way that we're doing things. Take it as constructive and always have a measured response. One that is respectful, one that is factual, one that is truthful, and set them straight when they're wrong. But do so in a respectful way, and it will improve your relationship. So remember, get the conductor thing in there and make them feel that they're leaders, and they'll like you for that. Okay? That improves things. Foundations of a strong relationship. Mutual respect and trust. It's always about trust. Trust, trust, trust. You break trust, you may never get it back. I worked at Saskatchewan County. I had a mentor again. His name was George Hybricks. He was a CFO. This is when I was in the finance game. And he was somebody I really actually enjoyed. He taught me a lot. Made me work a lot of hours, of course, budget guy, right? Everybody knows budget. We work late sometimes. But he taught me a lot. But probably the most important thing that he taught me was the willingness to go the extra mile, to do the homework so that we knew that what we told council was absolutely factual and correct. Because our job is to be a trusted advisor. And if you remember that you're there to be that trusted advisor and you work on that, and then tell council, I'm here to be your trusted advisor, means that I need to build your trust, I need to provide you the information that allows you to make decisions. And here's something I've said with councils many times that makes them work. It just turns their heads and then gets them back in their lane. I tell them, you're too important to be worrying about operations. Smart, strategic, right? But all kidding aside, you're too smart to be worrying about operations. We need to be here thinking about vision, thinking about where you want us to be, thinking about leadership, dealing with our public, engagement, telling us what people want. That's where we need you. We don't need you to tell us how to fix the problem. So please stay in your lane and we can make special things happen in our communities. I can tell you right now, I've been all across Canada, quite frankly. I've lectured as far as Kiev, Ukraine, on municipal government. Really loved it there. That's a long story, but anyways. And I'll say this. I can go through communities, I can tell which ones, by just driving through them, have a great relationship with council, and they have it right versus ones that don't. The ones that don't, you can tell the grass is overgrown, the infrastructure is falling apart, the rec facility's been closed down because they don't have a new ice plant or haven't closed down, curling rink is falling apart, whatever it is might be. It's because they did not have that clarity of rules and they didn't work together with their councils to make things happen. It happens all the time. And so clarify the rules, get somebody to tell council this is your lane, our lane, and we can make special things happen. Make sure you know who has authority for what, and here's the thing, clarify your expectations. What is it you want from me? All of you in this room, because you're administrators, probably have direct reports, people who report to you. What do you do with them once a year? Performance appraisal, right? Performance appraisal, usually, or you should at least. Now, I learned performance appraisals from a finance manager. Her name was Christine Jackson. She drove me crazy because she got the finance manager job over me at the time, which was, I couldn't believe it. She was an external. A year later, so I didn't like her very much. A year later, I thought to myself, thank God she got the job because she's so much better than me. I could learn so much from her, and I did. She was one of the best bosses I ever had. Pretty tough on me too, but she was good. But the things that she really taught me was the concept of performance management. The idea of having performance appraisal, setting expectations, giving goals, and here was the biggest one. What is it you need to succeed, Tim? What training do you need? She's the one who pushed me into, and this, some of you will believe this, some of you won't, I couldn't public speak until I was 36 years old. I couldn't speak in a meeting until I was 35 years, 36 years old. I was scared, and she came into my office one day and said, Tim, I know that you're nervous, but if you don't get over it, I'm going to fire you. I thought, what? I'm really good at my job. She's like, yeah, you're really good at the financials. You're great at this stuff. You're great at coming up with all these ideas and how we can fund things. But you need to be more than that. And I know that you can. So I'm going to fire you. But here's the thing. We'll do that in 6 months. But if you take these courses and I see you present some things, then we'll be okay. And so I did that. And I tell you right now, here I am today. I can get up in front of people, right? And all it takes is vodka and oranges. All it takes. But all kidding aside, she taught me the importance of performance appraisal, setting expectations, but also giving me the tools to succeed. And that's the key thing that I think we miss sometimes with our elected officials, is asking them, or letting them know when we clarify those rules, authority, expectations, is I need to be able to succeed because I need you to tell me what you want. What do you want as a leader? What do you want as somebody who's managing me? What do you want so I can meet those goals? If it's quiet and you don't have those expectations, it's frustrating. And then you deal with that where your councils are quiet and everything else, but then they complain. Anybody? Okay. You can put your hands up. I'm going to video this to your council later, but anyways. All kidding aside, that's very frustrating, that's very hard. And what do we do? You know, all of you are us, our leaders, and our parents, things like that. What do we do with our kids when they don't do well? We put them up for adoption, get rid of them, right? Oh, mine's right there. What do we do, Ryan? We send you to your room, right? But all kidding aside, he's 22 now, so I can't do it anymore. He's bigger than me. But what we do is we figure out a plan to make them better because we want them to succeed. And so we want to make sure our councils are aware of that in the orientation, because some councils come in and they think that their job is to criticize. So make sure that you clarify that really quickly, and again, it will improve the relationship. Tell them, I need you, you're my leader. And through your leadership, we will flourish, but I need to know what you want from me. Really important. Communication is everything. So again, look at your formal and informal communication. Formal, obviously, in council meetings, maybe you have a, like I said, I know that there's all these rules about public, whatever, and everything else. I'm a big believer that it should be okay to have a meeting with CEO and council that's informal, just to talk about the relationship. No business, no decisions being made, but talk about how's things going. I believe that should be put in legislation. Bill did it. I watched him for years, 10 years, walking by a glass door every 2 weeks. Never missed a beat. He was there with council, and I know it was just talking about relationship. That can make all the difference in the world, and we so often have no time to actually talk with council, do we, when it comes to the relationship and how things are going. You want to touch base with them on a personal level in some way, shape, or form. Now here's the informal relationship part, and I dealt with this when I was the CEO of Brewerheim. I'm the guy that went to Brewerheim and made a recommendation to council. The most expensive thing we do is recreation. I maybe will make a recommendation in this budget. We should maybe shut down the hockey rink. What do you think council thought of me? Are you crazy? Are you nuts? That's the thing that everybody in our community loves. Like, that's just silly, basically. And I got a lot of heat in the council meeting, but they were respectful. But the next day, I learned something from the mayor. And he's a great mayor. In fact, he's still the mayor there, and I talk to him often. Carl Hauk, good mayor. He took me for what he called the walk around the lake. And the walk around the lake was basically, you will usually make it back from the lake. Right? You're not going to be sunk in the lake with rocks, whatever, but the walk around the lake was the mayor conveying to me council's frustration. So the council, again, culture-wise, was respectful that each of them weren't going to send me messages and get me kind of clouded with all of these different thoughts. The mayor would talk to me personally about what I was doing, what I did wrong. And I really appreciated that. It was not my first or not my last walk around the lake, but one that I appreciated, and I often said to him, please always take me for that walk around the lake if things are going bad, because I'd rather know than just sit there and not know, and then be blindsided. Christine Jackson, the one thing she said to me is, you'll never have to worry about your job unless I've told you. Remember that 6 months? If you learn and do your work, whatever, she didn't really mean it, I think, because she liked me, but she gave me 6 months to get better. So that is one of the key things that your council's got to be aware of. If you at least give me a heads up and allow me to get better and improve, that is what I expect from you. That is what we call good leadership and good performance management. So make sure you do that informal, right? The walk around lakes, welcome them and ask about them, because it will really help that relationship and maybe stop things from getting too out of hand that they should. Okay? So again, make sure your reports are clear, timely, and they're tied to strategic objectives. Okay, there's some buzzwords there, but the key thing is here is be that trusted advisor, get them good information, get them the information they need, right? And go the extra mile to do that, it'll make a difference. You're there to support them. You're there to make them successful, and you want to make sure that they understand that. Encourage regular check-ins between the mayor and the reeve. Again, that walk around the lake. Now, the walk around the lakes is when something extreme has happened, but again, I would make sure that I always checked in with my mayor, my reeve, and I would always just simply ask the question, like I did last night, how's things going? Is there anything I need to know about? Is there any issues politically on council. And the mayor there, and this is where I think, again, in your orientations, and you as CEOs, when you get new mayors, you might want to talk to Reeves, sorry, it's a rural area. You might want to say to them, your job is to make sure that you understand council's going to disagree. Your job isn't necessarily to fix everything, but at least make me aware if it's affecting me or my team. Okay? So make sure that you open up that line of communication so again you're not blindsided and you're able to react. One thing that improves relationship more than anything with the council is when they're not happy about something, is seeing that you've actually taken action to correct it, if it's warranted. Once you start doing that, they start saying, you know what, these are our guys. They're willing to make change that we want because they're willing to go the extra mile to basically appease what we want or whatever it is we need. And so that's something that you want to make sure of. It doesn't mean that we hop and we jump for everything they ask for, because sometimes what they're asking for isn't accurate and correct. I've had many times I've had to sit with them and say, you know what, I know that somebody wrote a letter saying that our staff are lazy or they weren't doing a good job or they want this, but you know what, that letter's wrong. You didn't understand what was going on that day or what was happening or whatever it might be, right? There's just some incorrect information. So we want to make sure that we also have a good relationship so that we can correct council respectfully if we have to. So we want to make sure. So again, avoiding the surprises as I mentioned before. Setting expectations early, so clarify expectations for things like reporting, performance, timelines, policy implementation. Like, again, with your councils, you want to make sure that you, and again, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but things like, this is when we get our financial reports to you. This is when we will provide updates on the strategic plan. What have we done from an action plan perspective? This is, you know, what are our timelines to get projects done? We want to make sure that we keep up to date on them, because that frustrates council more than anything, is when they expect projects to get done and they don't get done, they don't hear about why. My experience has been this: if you're willing to be, again, completely unvarnished and open and honest with your council about the shortcomings that we have on occasion, because look, your jobs are hard, right? Usually they're pretty patient. There isn't a business I can think of in the world that has more chaos that occurs in the municipality. How many businesses have to deal with weather every day? How many businesses have to deal with political unrest? How many businesses have to deal with infrastructure failure? How many businesses have to deal with the photocopiers not working? God, whatever it might be, right? To get my agenda ready for the council meeting, like, just everything can go wrong in this municipality. There's just so many things going on. It's impossible to get everything right all the time. You want to make sure that council's aware of the things that have gone wrong. So again, let them know these things and clarify that. And again, it's all about that relationship. You want to have that open dialogue, right? Be unvarnished and be honest and be humble about your approach, and it will make a big difference. Develop a shared understanding through your orientations. And I've done this many times with councils when they're starting off with a new administrator, starting off as a new council. And I get brought in often when things are really going bad. And so when you do that, a lot of times I say to councils when I get called on occasion to do a sale review, and they say, Tim, we're really frustrated with our sale, we want to maybe make a change. I always say, whoa, pump the brakes. You need at least a one-day, maybe a weekend workshop together to talk about what's going right and what's going wrong. Give the sale an opportunity to say his piece, council say their piece, because man, turnover's damn expensive. And often it's unwarranted and things get fixed. And remember, maybe I go that extra mile because my friend lost his life to this business because of the stupidity of that lack of willingness to work things out. So really consider that when you're actually administrator. Think, where am I going to find my time to meet with council for a day? And what is our day? It's nothing more than, how are we doing? Are we meeting our expectations? Are there any problems? Anything like that, right? In a safe environment, not in public open meetings. That kind of thing. I know that our problems have become, what do you mean you gotta do things in non-open meetings? I think when it comes to pure relationship stuff, I think it should be okay. Because it can really make a big difference with the problems we have in municipal government today. So we need to learn how to connect again with our councils. Expectations should be documented, reviewed, and mutually agreed upon, meaning I want you to put it in print so I know what I should be doing and not doing. So I can measure something so it's not just blindsided, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But you didn't tell me that's what you wanted, right? So I think it's really important that we set those expectations and we document things. And so one of the things that I would recommend to everybody, does everybody have a strategic plan, by the way, here? So I would recommend getting a strategic plan. Though I'm a consultant, I'm not trying to sell my wares, you can do them yourself. I wouldn't recommend it, I get Bloom to do it. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But But all kidding aside, the biggest thing about a strategic plan when they fall down is the administrative side, not developing the action plan that follows the strat plan. When I do a strat plan with the community, every community, if you Google, you'll find them. The strat plan, within 8 weeks, I always say the administration must come up with an action plan that ties to that strat plan, and that action plan will then go through the budget. So, do we need new staff to be able to meet your expectations? Do we need to get some training to meet your expectations? Do we need new equipment to meet your expectations? You want to turn things into tangible, concrete results so we can actually make council accountable as well. If what you're asking for is unrealistic, it's something that we can't achieve because you're not willing to give us the resources, or help us get project, or get new staff, or maybe approve a new piece of equipment, or whatever it might be, well then your vision is going to die in the vine. And what we've created in our strat plan is nothing more than a shiny bookshelf item. So setting those expectations down and writing things down is absolutely key to your success. And here's the thing, I'm going to speak about this a little bit later. I'm kind of a finance guy, a little bit. Is the budget is the gatekeeper for strategy, for politics, for basically everything. Decisions get made through the budget. It's not a financial document, it's an action plan to make a vision happen. So make sure council's aware of that. So that's the kind of things that you need to look at and then agree on. Okay? What can get done and what can't get done. Tools for managing performance. So does everybody get their annual performance appraisal done with council? Put up your hands. Yes? That's not enough hands. How does that feel? Right? That's awful. If I were you, the first thing I would, after this thing go, you know what, there's this short chubby guy from Alberta that I listen to, who thinks morning is afternoon, whatever it might be, but he said, what I need from the council is a performance appraisal. And it's not about you criticizing me, it's about us developing our relationship. That's what I learned from Christine. The performance appraisal, the management process, is not about criticism. It's not necessarily even about making me improve. It's about developing our relationship between the supervisor and the subordinate. And we are the subordinates of council. And that's sometimes where they miss the point. They forget what they are. They're not there to criticize us. They're to support us and make us better. Set us expectations. Tell us what they want us to be. Right? And those types of things. And once we can get them there and get them to buy into that process, we then have something documented that tells us, hey, here's the things we can do. The performance appraisal also is a negotiating document, which means that I can say to council, this isn't doable. This is doable, this isn't doable, whatever it might be. That's important to note as well when you're looking at this. Because if you can do those things and negotiate up front, it really helps overcome issues you have when you're not meeting their unset expectations. So definitely ask for an annual performance review, but ask for the process, which means the most important part of any performance review is not the end, it's the beginning. What do you expect? When do you expect it by? And then me as a negotiator, this is what I need to be able to meet those expectations. I maybe need training, maybe I need new staff, maybe I need new equipment, whatever it might be. The performance appraisal process is that relationship and negotiation. So you want to make sure you have that in the first relationship. Use SMART goals aligned to council's vision. Now, this was late at night, I already know what a SMART goal is, I'm just kidding. But again, think about your goals. What is it that you want to achieve, and be ready to check those off at the end of the year, because again, I can say to council, hey, you may be frustrated with me, but look, we're doing everything you've asked us to do. That's an important part of the relationship. 360-degree feedback when appropriate. Always be asking, how am I doing? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Make sure that you're open to listening to what they have to say. Doesn't mean that you have to be a doormat. Push back respectfully. If they're wrong, let them know they're wrong. No, our staff are good. No, I've done a good job. No, I did communicate properly. No, I am being fair in the way that I approach sharing information with council. Make sure that you have the intestinal fortitude to push back on occasion. And here's the thing I will say. I'm giving you a lot of information. Half of you will get fired when you try this when you get back. I'm just kidding. But one of the things that's so important is that you will, on occasion, run into that unreasonable individual that none of this works. Okay? And this is where I'm sincere, and I'm trying to reach out to that few that might be in here that are in that situation. I feel for you. And the thing that I'd say to you is, sometimes it's not worth it. You know, do not sit in a situation of abuse or stress, or where it's affecting your health or your family life and things like that. Make sure you take care of yourself. And here's the thing: call me. I talk to people all the time about these things, and it really helps. Now everybody in this room knows why. So really think about that. Get that feedback, ask them how you're doing and everything else, and make sure that you overcome misunderstandings really quickly. Reviews should be constructive, forward-focused, and non-political. Remember, you're an administrator, so it's non-political. And one of the things that's really important about your review, and this is one thing I really don't like, and don't do this, is a committee of council that does the performance review. So maybe 2 or 3 of them. Don't allow that. It should be all of council. Right? Because if you get some councillors, sometimes politics will start to come into review. They start saying what they want, not necessarily what council wants. And you don't want that. The worst thing that you can do as an administrator, trust me, I've seen it many times, is pick a side. Do not do that. You may have a side, you may have councillors that you like. It's happened to me. I've worked with councils where it's like, oh, there's some councils I just want to squish your head. They drive me crazy. But the reality is, I know, don't do it. Don't pick a side. Don't show them I like them or don't like them, because it is a road to hell. Because they can tell that you picked a side. So you got to be careful and make sure your reviews consider that. Tell council, I want this to be fair and equitable. I need all of you to review me. I work for all of you. I work for council. I don't work for any councillor or the mayor. I work for council. That's why I'm so alarmed with this strong mayor concept that's coming out right now. It's not good. Right? So make sure you're non-political. It makes a difference. I will tell a story about this. Again, working in finance, by the way, I'm a big blood, so I'll be dropping stuff. If I fall over, I'm okay with it. But all kidding aside, I can remember working in finance one time, and one of the counselors, this is very early in my career, came into my office, and I was like, oh my God, there's a counselor in my office. And he said, I need some information around this development. Can you help me? I'm kind of curious about the subdivision. I'm kind of curious how much the infrastructure costs. So anyways, I was excited. I was like, a counselor knew my name, right? And Saskatchewan County is about 100,000 people. It's fairly big, so I was really excited. And I put together this beautiful report. I went to the counselor, I gave it to him, and I walked through and I thought, I did something great, and everybody's gonna think I'm a hero. And I went to the council meeting. And in the council meeting, the council put up his hand and says, I just want to mention this is gonna cost this, and I'm not in favor of this development because this. And the rest of the council, I'll never forget, all of them. How do you know that? And he goes, Tim gave me the report. And they looked, and I still remember George Hybrids, he's ahead of me, taking his glasses off and going like this. And he came into my office later and says, never give one council information unless you give it to all of them. Your report was right, but what you did is you showed favoritism to one councillor from administration, and you did it from my office, so don't do that again. George is a really nice guy, so never threatening at all, but I really took that to heart. If you're going to give something to a councillor, make sure you give it to all the council, always. It's one of the keys to success in our business, to not show favoritism. And trust me, I've had lots of councillors come into my office to ask me questions and things like that, and then of course I'll give them the information, and then right after I type out the email, all council, just so you're aware, so-and-so came to see me, asked a question, here's the answer. I make sure all the council gets it. When I do that, I'm showing no political favor, and I'm keeping myself alive for another day. So it's one of those things you want to consider. Tools for management performance, be fair and be non-political always. Okay? Anybody ever had any experiences or things like that? Yeah. And you have counselors that will want to become friends with you, right? And,
I have a question, sorry.
Sure.
I'm in a joint office.
Okay.
I have 14 counselors.
You have an office where they smoke joints? What was that? That's a great office. That's pretty relaxed, right? Yeah, sorry. A joint office.
I have a joint office, so
Yeah.
that's between a town and
Sure.
an RM.
Yeah.
So that means I have 14 counselors that decide my performance review. I would prefer...
So is it a specialized municipality?
No, they're 2 separate municipalities, but they share me and my assistant.
What?
It's a joint office, so we are divided 60-40. And
Heard of that
because
before.
of that,
This is a new one.
they come in, we do a special meeting once a year
Wow.
where we discuss joint office expenses, so the office itself, how it's run, expenses through their paper expenses, building repairs expenses, photocopier, any upgrades, and then myself, my assistant, and our janitor all get decided at this special meeting. So we then give our little report, ask our little report, or whatever we asked for, They kick us out. We don't get any input into their discussion. We don't get to be a part of it. And then we come back in. That's why I would like a committee from each of them to meet outside of.
That's a very unique situation, and I have to ask, when was the last time you saw him? He must be very busy. That is extremely hard, especially with the challenges of political issues between urban and rural municipalities. I'm sure it's Saskatchewan, Alberta, all kidding aside.
I just get to know a lot of things.
I think to be honest, and maybe give me a call offside if you'd like about it, but the short answer is this is always, you gotta sit down and clarify the expectations. And if it was me, the committees, at the very least, would be the Reeve and Merritt. Is that what it is? The Reeve and Merritt getting in a room and just saying what you said to me. This is the problem. This is the issue. And probably put something into maybe a procedural bylaw or something that's written down about how you approach things. One of the keys to success when it comes to political battle and challenge is to write things down and say, this is how we approach this issue. And then make sure that councillors have that and say, here's the rules of engagement with us as administration. I think that's the best way I can put it. The other, but that's a hard one. That's a tough one. No. Interesting. Thank you. So, moving on. Conflict prevention and resolution. Now, here's the thing. I know that most of you probably have never experienced conflict with your councils, but I have. But all kidding aside, we have conflict each and every day. And I have conflict in the morning with my golden retriever when I'm trying to get her to play ball, whatever. I have conflict with my son when I'm trying to kick him out of bed to go to work. And those types of things, I gotta be quiet now, that's right. And those types of things. And so we are always managing and dealing with conflict in our lives. Even with ourselves, when I look in the mirror, I have to push myself to go up to the gym, which I haven't done in about a year or so. But anyways, that's it. So we have to recognize that there's going to be tension and those types of things. If you want to deal with it, here's the key to conflict management, is dealing with things early and dealing with things proactively. And so do not be shy about dealing with conflict. The worst thing we can do is ignore. That doesn't mean that we don't deal with that golden rule, and it's one that I believe in, called the 24-hour rule, right? Where we don't react necessarily really quickly when we're dealing with conflict. I used to have a problem with that. Lots of emails I wish I could retract. I still try to retract some of them from 20 years ago. But all kidding aside, you want to make sure that you don't react too quickly, but you make sure that you're proactive in dealing with conflict. Because what's your job as an administrator? Number one, and I'll say this, I do a lot of hiring of administrators and CEOs. What's the number one thing that councils say to me when I ask them, what do you want out of a good CEO or administrator? What do you think it is? We want a problem solver. We want a problem solver, somebody that can solve our problems, and they perceive that as solving daily problems, but also solving the problem of what they see as what they want as a strategic vision. And so, but the big thing is they see challenges that they have as council. And your thing is to also, I hate to say it sometimes, help them referee the issues that they have on council as well. And so conflict prevention and resolution has to be a tool in your toolbox. So you want to think about things like role creep. You're starting to tell us about administrative things that is kind of out of your lane. You're not providing us clear direction, but then you criticize us. Maybe communication breakdowns. You're really frustrated with me, but you don't say anything. You know, and over time, let's face it, maybe some of you have dealt with this. I left my socks on the floor. I came in late after having drinks with my friends. I forgot to get flowers for the birthday or whatever it might be. It builds up over time, but nothing is said, and then all of a sudden, bang, it blows up in your face, right? That's our personal relationships. It is the same with the council. Things will accumulate. So I would say that it's really key and important to make sure that you are putting in your toolbox from a conflict resolution perspective is, again, those constant, how are we doing, are there issues, and learning how to read a room if you see frustration in the room. So you want to get good at that. You want to create a safe environment to raise concerns. This is what Bill was really good at, and Doug as well. When I was the GM of Community and Protective Services in Spruce Grove, the one thing that I learned from Doug as a CEO is he said, Jim, council, I want you to know as the GM, council doesn't just need to deal with me, they can deal with you as well. As long as you always keep me in the loop. But you have a safe environment for them to raise concerns, which means, and he says, it is okay for them to come in and complain, but it's also okay for you to come in and complain. And what he meant by that is that I could come into his office and complain about things that frustrated me. He always said, you can tell me if you don't like what I'm saying to you as your boss. You can tell me if you don't weigh the way I said something maybe to you in a meeting, whatever it might be. You're more than welcome to come in and talk to me about it with the door closed behind you. But once we leave this room, we will have solved the issue before we leave. And that is something you want to make sure that you talk with your council about again at the outset of their term. Is that it's really important that we don't let unsaid things get unresolved. We want to deal with conflict proactively so that we can get on to the great stuff of making our community what we want it to be. Okay? So really important. And again, sometimes, and I do a lot of this, is external facilitation and coaching. Has anybody ever dealt with this where you have some consultant come in or a coach, whatever, they see something to council, and the council goes, we like that, but you've been telling council that for like a year? Like, and you just kind of go, I've been telling them that for like the last 6 months. How come this person comes in and says it and they listen to it? Sometimes it's just the way it is. The other thing too is a little bit of a heads up as administrators. There are sometimes, occasionally, things you don't want to go there. It's better to let the person who can drive out of the community and take the beating, but walk away from it and take it on yourself. And so always know what are the types of things I should deal with council and what are the things I should outsource to somebody else that's ready to take that beating for me, right? I've done 7 code of conduct investigations in the last 2 years. Don't want to do them anymore, but I probably will. But I took a beating on a few of them because councilors never like it when they're told they're wrong, right? So it's something that you want to maybe think about, okay, I need somebody else to deal with this if we have a conflict that's gotten to the point of code of conduct, right? Things like that. So really think about conflict and resolution and put the tool in your toolbox. Moving on, supporting council as a team. Again, 2 hours is a long time, I know. A lot of issues. Council, and again, this is kind of the point I was making before. Remember, you are there to support council as a whole, not as individual councilors. And this is hard sometimes to get. They're individuals. You're human. You will develop respect for certain councilors. You will develop a relationship with certain councilors. You will maybe like the politics of certain councilors, though we shouldn't say that we do that. You'll believe in the opinions of certain councilors, right? So that's okay. You're a human being. But your job is to stay non-political, so be very careful of showing any kind of support for a councillor versus council on the whole. It is death, per se, when you do that. Always. Learn how to count. 5, 2, 3. All I need is one turn and I'm out of the job, right? Put their hands up. Those kinds of things. And so be very careful of picking sides. And I always tell CEOs, don't do that. Because if you do, that's not your job, right? And it's hard sometimes. We do get political. One of the things that Christine Jackson always said to me, and this is when I supervise people, I actually became a pretty good manager and leader at one point after lots of training. But one thing that really stuck with me with Christine, and I've used this often in my relationship with council, is be friendly but not friends. Be friendly but not friends. And that's the way you have to think of your relationships with council and councilors. And if you consider it that way, then it's professional. Always professional, right? I've seen CEOs that after work have gone out with certain councilors or play on the same hockey team with certain councilors or go golfing with certain councilors and others know it, and that's just not right. You get you in trouble. So make sure you support council on the whole, not individuals, right? Council acts as a collective decision-making body, so we don't want to see splits, but we respect them at all times. We want to, on occasion, give them some advice around that, right? Make sure that they understand the dysfunction lies in splits when we start making decisions that are not because of the information that's in front of them, not because of the facts that we provide them. And when they start doing that, it starts to ruin the relationship between administration and council. You know why? Because we've done a ton of work to give them the right information to help support a decision. Because of the split, they're just making decisions arbitrarily because they don't like each other. We have to make sure that we're open up with the council and say, this is what's happening. It's hard on my team to provide you with information that's correct and that you're ignoring. And it's really hard on us to know that the public is going to get really upset at us because of the things that you're doing because you're split and dysfunctional. That might be one that you bring in the third-party guy to talk with council about if you have to, because it can be very difficult. But make sure they understand that, because it's hard on the relationship. And again, individual requests should be managed through protocol and policy. Like I said before, don't be that guy like me that gives the one counselor information and not all, because that is a road to not a very good place. We must also navigate political pressure, as I mentioned before. We're supposed to be non-political, but again, we are neutral, factual, and focused on policy and not politics. And sometimes this is hard. I've worked with a lot of administrations and municipalities where the council or the CEO or the administrator, I apologize, has gotten political. And they see themselves as the leader of council. I've seen a few administrators do that. It lasts for a while sometimes if they got councils that will buy into that, but on the most part, usually it goes south pretty quick. So make sure you avoid politics, okay? Support council decisions regardless of your personal opinion. This is Tom. We give them information. We tell them everything that we think. We give them our opinion that's based in facts, not in politics. And we let them make the decision. We allow for proper debate, proper time for decision, Robert's rules, other things fall up, all these types of things. And then we allow for the democratic process that makes our communities beautiful and allows us to have this wonderful quality of life that we have today in our free country. We allow that to take place. And then what do we do as administrators? We walk through the wall to make it happen. That's Tom. And as long as we do that, then we are going to be in good shape. It doesn't mean that you don't go home on occasion, you go, squish hands, I wish they wouldn't have done that, or made that decision, or been frustrated, and you just go with it. Here's one thing, I sell these on my website, so please go. Everybody needs one of these. It's a small pillow about this big. You put it in your desk, and after a council meeting, you grab it and you just scream into it as loud as you can. It's a tool I've used many, many times in my career, and it's something I think is pretty important for us as administrators to have, because you will get frustrated in this business. But here's the thing, trust me, and I've had this happen to me. I've had many times where I've given information that I thought was right, and council went a different way. And then many years later, I live in the community that I used to work at, by the way, and they were right, I was wrong. Building a new library that I thought was a waste of money. Spending money on a new fancy fire hall I thought was maybe better spent on maybe maintenance roads. All kinds of different decisions that I had opinions on as a finance officer, funding plans over time. And over time, 20-some years later, I live in the community, council was right. So that's the key thing, is we're not in the business of tomorrow, we're in the business of tomorrow's tomorrow, decades down the road. And so council's decisions, sometimes we don't see the fruits of the labors for many, many years. And so you want to make sure that you're aware of that. Ultimately, it's not our job to really be political or have an opinion in this thing, so we move on. Use governance training to build awareness, and again, those professional boundaries. Like I said, friendly, not necessarily friends. Sorry, council, can't go with you out for beers after with a couple of you. Not going to come over to your place to watch the game. And I give information to all of you equally at all times, right? And my door is open to any councilor. All of council knows that, but know this, if you're a councilor and you come in, that all of council is going to hear about the conversation we had. Right? That's my boundary. That's my professional boundary. I'm not going to allow a councilor to come in to badmouth another councilor or ask for information from others. I professionally can't do that. And here's the thing, once you do that, if you set that open really quickly, early at the outset, all of council will really respect that. Here's the thing, if you go into a room with somebody and you badmouth them, whatever, they say things back, whatever, and I walk out and I go, what's the council going to think about you? Well, I can get away with that, right? So are they going to really respect you? Probably not. So be careful about being friendly with certain councilors. I've seen them blow up in many administrators' faces. Okay, culture of professionalism, we talked about that. Respect, openness, and accountability, obviously, right? Celebrate joint successes. And here's the thing, and a lot of councils don't get this, is that success is joint. We are their team. We're there for them. They're supposed to lead us, inspire us, motivate us. The best council-municipal relationship is we do it together, and if they understand that and we celebrate those joint successes, it's great. So, Bill, the glass window, every year he had what was called an annual general meeting, and at least 25 to 30% of that meeting was celebration of successes throughout the year. And always he would say this. I remember the first time he did it, and he did it for 10 straight years. He would say, by the way, I just wanted to say to you, to everybody, the leaders of our organization are in the room today. And council would stand up and wave at us in front of this theater that we used to have this in. And so Bill was making sure we understood and made sure council understood we saw them as the leaders, not necessarily him, though he was the leader as our administrator. But he made sure he blended that relationship and made council feel important. Anybody want to elect an official that just want to feel important? That's why they do it, right? And so you got to play that a little bit, right? But again, celebrating joint successes is key, and once we start celebrating those successes together, it helps with the relationship. So again, share values, strategic goals, look at your strategic plan together, develop those action plans, and show council that you're getting things done. That's what they want. No council is going to be happy if they're not seeing change. They're disruptors, and thank God they are. If it wasn't for those disruptors, we wouldn't have skate parks, we wouldn't have indoor ice for kids to play hockey on. Without those disruptors, we wouldn't have some of the industry and business that we have here today. When I was a kid playing hockey, until I was 10, I played on outdoor ice. There was no capacity for indoor ice in Edmonton. So we would play on outdoor ice, and once you turned to 11, you got to play the indoor hockey. Try telling kids today there's no indoor ice. You gotta play on outdoor ice, right? I can still remember Ewald Lang shooting a puck over the boards and knocking his own mom's teeth out during the game. It was awesome. Nah, just kidding. But you know, our parents would sit outside in -30. Imagine that. Now think about that today. It's the disruption of councils that were willing to invest in recreation facilities, and now allows us to have complete minor sports played in amazing facilities all across Canada. So think about that. Shared strategic goals. Who does it want to be, and how are we going to get there? Okay? So rebuilding after conflict, challenges will happen. So acknowledge what went wrong, focus on the repair, and develop the shared plan for how are we going to make things better. Here's the key thing. You are going to have conflict with council. You are going to have things where maybe you've made a mistake. There are going to be times they've made a mistake. There's going to be times when they're mean to you or mean to your staff. It happens. And as administrators, we have to have the intestinal fortitude and have the thick skin to be able to deal with it because our staff expect us to. So if you're going to panic or have issues or get upset because a counselor was mad at you, get the pillow, scream into it, but don't let the staff see that because you're expected to be strong, right? But you're also expected to tell council and get them in a room and say, that was not okay. So you want to make sure that you rebuild that conflict and those issues have to turn over. And sometimes, like I said before, it will result in a sale moving on occasion. And again, I'll say this. Unfortunately, I was not successful with one very dear friend. I have been successful with many. With this conversation where I say, you know what? It's just a day. Tomorrow will be better. Trust me. Right? And they always end up getting another job, and then later calling me and say, you know what? This council I got a new job with is great. Really like it. Great community. Best thing that ever happened to me. I've heard that happen so many times. I can't stress it enough. Or times when maybe a council's changed or maybe an attitude's changed, whatever it might be. And so don't let it get you down too much. Hopefully I've got through to maybe one or two that maybe are feeling stressed. And if you want to talk with me after about that, it's an open door. So think about that. So final reflections. Okay. Strong administrative council relationships require attention, reflection, and intention. So what are you going to do? One, I'm going to ask them to tell me what your expectations are of me. I want a performance appraisal once a year. And I want you to set the expectations, but I also want you to understand this is a negotiation. You're going to set expectations, but you're going to give me the tools so I can succeed. That's my expectation of you. So you want to make sure you tell them that. You want to be able to reflect, so we're going to have time to figure out how I'm doing and those sorts of things. And then intention to get better, right? And so I'm going to actually also plan maybe once a month, or maybe once every 3 months, whatever it might be, a workshop where it's just me and council, and all we're going to talk about is the relationship and how we're doing, how my team's doing. Are we meeting our expectations? Is there any unsaid things that have annoyed you that I should know about? Those are the things that you're going to do. So a workshop, so performance appraisal, maybe a workshop, and then having the intention to always be working on a relationship, right? So let them know about these tools that will help. Make time for trust, building feedback, and shared learning. Okay? So again, go to conferences with your council, go to a course with your council, take some, anything, right? Where you're there sitting beside them and learning and maybe talking about the things. Do you think, just, put your hands up, please, if this makes sense. Do you think it'd be useful if your council was here listening to this with you today? For those who didn't put your hands up, get out. I'm just kidding. But all kidding aside, these are the things that we have to welcome into our world today. Councils, we need to talk about these things together, and maybe we need to listen to this short chubby guy from Alberta or somebody else about these things because we need help. Right? So those things. Encourage adoption of written protocols, and then leave with one action that each participant can take to improve the relationship. And so be constructive. So talking for the sake of talking is a bit of a waste of time. So when you're finished those conversations, have a bit of an action. Here's what I'm going to do to make things better, and here's what you should do to make things better. What are our misunderstandings and how can we make sure that we overcome them in the future? Get all those things done and your relationships should improve a little bit. So that's it about relationships. What do you think? Will it work? I will say this. I did this late last night and I just made all this stuff up, so don't take this stock in it. So it's, pardon me? Yeah, I still have 2 things to get through, but yeah, let's ask some questions. Questions, go ahead. Yeah. Questions, anybody? Questions? Come on, get your hand. I know you have some. Oh, there's one over there. Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'll just put her hand and then down. Any questions? Anybody? I'll ask you a question. Anybody have any conflict with their council within the last 365 days? Anybody? Okay, give her the link and ask her. Would you mind sharing this with us? Anybody? Yeah. I'm just going to upload it to Facebook. Don't worry about it. Okay, come on. Couple of questions. What do you think? Okay, no questions. No problem at all. I have a question for you. Are there? Oh, we got one. Yay! I remember how that used to feel. Don't ask me, don't ask me, don't ask me.
So I have a question about council-to-council relations.
Yeah.
And what do you suggest for that?
Very similar to the other things I talked about. Council to council and then to council, it's really about getting in a room and hashing things out. But be constructive. Do a little bit of work as a CAO, as an administrator. I did a lot of work in facilitation. So as a CAO, part of the role, and we have a lot of hats, is learn how to get a council in a room and work things out. And maybe even document, whether it's coursework through this or something else. Here's the key things to overcoming conflict with each other. And the biggest thing, and I say this, and this is where I have problems here, and they're going to throw stuff at me. The biggest problem I think we have in municipal government to an extent is the legislation that doesn't allow us to have kind of informal discussions that are outside of the public realm, where we can talk about things that are kind of not right. Like, do you know that his family ran over my dog 20 years ago, and that's why I can't like this guy, or things like that? There's some unsaid things that sometimes we want to get out. So get them in a room. It's my best advice. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment that, many times you've commented that the legislation doesn't allow to meet unless the public are welcome there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We did.
And most do. Don't tell them that, but most.
But it's simple. You just accept it's a committee.
Yep.
It's not public meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, we do it all the time.
Good.
So,
And I think you should, but I do think, and this is my point, maybe I wasn't correct how I said it. I think it should be put in legislation that we promote this, that there should be relationship meetings, there should be times with council, and it's to solve things like this, and there should be documentation around it. Issues with council, issues with their sale, things like that, and we can overcome so many issues if we made it formal, in my opinion.
totally agree.
Right? Because so many councils and administrators don't do it. You guys have a healthy situation, many don't.
Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead. Over there.
Just wait.
A template?
Yeah.
Give me a call. Absolutely. I've done numerous SAO performance appraisals on behalf of councils. I've got a great template and an improvement plan, all that kind of stuff. So I'll send it to your, and you can send it to everybody. Okay?
The second question is, how many counselors and your REEV would be in that appraisal?
So one of the things that's so important, all of them. The worst thing, in my opinion, you can do is have a committee of council do the performance appraisal of the SAO. And the reason why is you could end up with politics because they're not all there. I want to know what all of council thinks. I don't want to know what 2 or 3 of you think. I want to know what all of you think. Because remember, I report to council, not councilors. So if you have 5, 7, 9, you got to let them know, I'm sorry, it might be a little bit of work. Maybe you need to get a consultant to help us. But I want to hear from all of you about how I'm doing. Okay?
Hi. I just have a question. I'm pretty new in the whole administrative role.
You're doomed. Get out.
But I'm also pretty young, so something I've noticed is like on my council.
I have a lot of like close relationships, like sons and fathers. So I just want to know if you have any advice on like if problems come in with them that might be outside of the office, but they're bringing it in. Like what's the best way to deal with that?
So there's a son and father on council?
Yes.
Okay, so I worked with a husband and wife on council before and those types of things, and the thing is very clear, and again, you want to be, as a CEO, your job is to be a trusted advisor and not hold back, be what I like to call unvarnished. So you want to recognize that there's an issue there. And so make sure, and all the council should hear it, but make sure that you talk about the importance of councillors being, I'm there to advocate for people, I'm there to make decisions, I'm not there to be siloed, I'm not there to split, and make sure that there's an expectation. So let them know the expectation. If you see it happening though, it's not your job to be a family counselor, right? And so you need to push back a little bit and say we need to have respect, we need to be professional, and we also need to recognize what's the public perception of the situation. So it's a tough one, but it's one that I've seen before and it does happen. So just, you'll do great. Yeah, you'll do great. Any other questions or thoughts? Oh, there we go. Now we're getting going. I'll just ask a really quick question. Is there any Las Vegas fans in the building? Good, because there's a seat outside the parking lot for you to watch the rest of the presentation at the bar. Go Oilers!
I have a question about severance and contracts for CEOs. What are you seeing as industry standard for administrators when they're doing out their contracts? If council decides they're going to go another direction, how long of severance are you seeing people ask?
I'm from Alberta, so maybe a bit different, but so the sale contract, typically what we're seeing now, it used to be, this might surprise some because I'm not sure of Saskatchewan, used to be the rule of thumb was usually 24 months of pay if you do not renew my contract, okay? It is starting to move a bit. Some councils in Alberta are certainly pushing back now, and it's getting to where a lot of times the rule of thumb is about 12 months. Case law, just so everybody's aware, case law, if you've spent probably about 3 to 4 years, and it's usually about that 3 to 4 year mark as an administrator, and you get let go, if you ask for a year, case law, if you go to court, you'll usually get 12 to 16 months. So the lawyers on the town or the MD side will know that, and they'll recommend just settle because it'll cost you too much money as a town or MD to pay out, so they pay the 16 to 12 months. That's normal. Okay? And hopefully you never have to deal with that. Okay. Anybody else? Okay? Well, Las Vegas fans, we get to stay. Okay. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to that. I want to say thank you for putting up with my nervousness at the beginning, because that was a bit hard for me to talk about, because this situation really has been for me a lot. And so I can't stress this enough. If anybody ever has any concern, issues, make a phone call, if not to me, to somebody else. Okay? So they told me I have to go straight through that there's no break. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I want to make sure that you get a break. And so what I'll do is just tell me when you're done reading the slides, and then I'll just kidding. Now we get some fun stuff. Municipal financial disclosures. Yeah, so I was a bit of a finance guy at one point, so I'll just go through this pretty quickly. Here's the thing. If a lot of you probably know this already, so I'm doing this presentation fully for my son who's going for a CPA. Disclosures are basically just notes of the financial statements to give you a narrative understanding of the challenges that are behind the numbers. That's it. But as an administrator, I'll say this. Every client I have, whenever I get a new client, the first thing I do, believe it or not, is I pull their financial statements and I read their notes and disclosures. Why do I do that? Because I want to know, is there something I'm getting myself into with these guys? Do they have any financial issues? Do they have a debt problem? Do they have a legal issue? It'll all be in the notes, and remember this, the financial statements are audited, which means that there's certain rules around PSAS that require disclosures to be very transparent and to be thorough. So you should be able to basically look at the notes or the disclosures and read them like a book, and it should tell you a story about the municipality. That's it. That's what the disclosures are for. Okay? So they provide the context of the financial figures. And like I said, the budget, the numbers are nothing more than a financial interpretation of action and services and strategy. The reports, the financial statements are the same, but they're nothing more than a financial interpretation of the things that we've done. So when I got to the point in my career when I would look at a financial statement and I saw the fire budget, I didn't see numbers, I saw firefighters going to a fire. When I looked at the recreation budget, I saw heat and water and electricity that was generated in our recreation facilities. When I looked at the planning budget, I saw planning officers working on plans to expand our community for residential and commercial industry, whatever it might be. So the numbers become much more, and the narrative is important, and you really want to understand these as an administrator. It's part of the job. Okay? So notes and schedules, the types of things that we're going to look at: investments, deferred revenue, long-term debt, yada yada yada. I'm not going to go over this at length because I know you're getting tired, so I'll get through this pretty quickly. But you want to have a good idea of what kinds of disclosures do we typically have in our financial statements. And I want to be able to read them, and I want to be able to have enough knowledge that I have a comprehensive view to know, are they okay, or do we have a problem, right? So those are the types of things I'm going to be looking at. Okay? I see some, and once in a while I see people taking pictures. I've sent the slides to your administrator. You guys can get all these again. Yeah. So anyways, so why do they matter? Because they enhance the transparency and public trust, right? So we are, and this is a word that I remember very well, or phrase, we are stewards of the public purse. And that is a big responsibility. So we're taking care of the public's money, which is a big responsibility. I'm very proud of that responsibility, and that's noted by being transparent through disclosures. So we have a legal issue, debt issue, whatever it might be. It helps ensure our financial health and decision-making context. So I want to know, and this is the thing, I've got lots of clients, and when they ask me maybe to do a strategic plan, and I talk with them when I start, because I turned a few down actually, quite a few down. When they say we have all these grandiose ideas, we want to do this and everything else, and I look at their financial statements and I see that they're financially in trouble, they're bankrupt, whatever, I go, you know what, you may want a strat plan, but you have a lot of work to do before you start thinking about strategic goals, before you get into, making new things happen. And so they can help you really understand the strategic context of where you can go and how prepared are you to make decisions based on maybe new infrastructure, new staff, whatever it might be. You can get a really good feel for the operational effectiveness and the potential of the municipality by looking at the notes of the financial statements. Okay? It supports accountability and compliance, obviously, with legislation. Again, I joke with the problems a little bit, but actually I really like my provincial counterparts because I believe in legislation, I believe in rules, and I believe that they make us better and they protect our municipalities across Canada. I believe in balanced budgets, I believe in debt management, I believe in investment risk mitigation, those types of things, and the disclosures help us police ourselves. Okay? So, again, accounting policies will be in there. So again, the basics of accounting. So again, the accrual method, all that kind of fun stuff that we learned in accounting. Capitalization thresholds, amortization. This is important for municipalities because again, what do we do as municipalities? We provide services through the people that work there and through capital assets. So municipalities are a pretty simple thing. We have capital assets that are being driven by, we have the grader that's being driven by the grader operator, we have the recreation facility that's being taken care of by the recreation attendant, we have a police vehicle that's being driven by the police officer, and so on and so on. So capital assets are absolutely key to our success in municipalities, so we want to understand the disclosures, okay? Revenue recognition, all the kind of fun stuff, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. And then we go to tangible capital assets and book values, work in progress and amortization, all this kind of fun stuff. Now, here's the thing. When you're reading a financial statement, which I'm going to go over a little bit later, we have a lot of, when we look at the balance sheet and we start looking at the notes, we'll look at some of our municipalities and it's like, holy cow, we have a rich, look at all the assets we have. Go try and sell a road. Go try and sell the traffic light, whatever it might be, right? Realistically, we have those assets, but recognize they have no intrinsic financial value. In a sense, our assets are liabilities because they're starting to degrade. They're starting to fall apart, whatever it might be, right? Not everywhere, but all kidding aside is you want to understand, at least at that level, that they may be an asset, but realistically, they're kind of a liability, okay? So we have work in progress assets, amortization, life cycle, all those kinds of things. Here's the fun thing, just for a little bit of a side. In the mid-2000s, I've been in this business since 1998, we had this big thing that we had to recognize all the assets in our municipalities. Believe it or not, for some of the young youth in this room today, we used to not have all of our assets actually documented. They weren't on the financial statements. And so in the mid-2000s, we were dictated by PSAS and Public Accounting Standards to basically do a TCA project and start advertising. I personally think it was an excellent project because it allowed us to know what assets we have and how are they starting to fall apart or degrade by amortization. It's an indicator of what we need to do from a replacement perspective, so that's good. Now we have, the next big thing is now asset management. Now, here's the thing, a lot of these things are simply to make consultants money, so you want to be careful of that as well. Because we spent a lot of money on TCA, and that was supposed to solve the asset management problem. Now we have a big asset management thing, and so that's a bit of an aside. So anyway, I don't know. Okay, accumulated surplus. Here's one that you want to know. So you're going to have in your notes accumulated surplus. If you look at the financial statements, this is a bit of an anomaly for some. Accumulated surplus is simply this: your unrestricted and restricted money in the bank. So I'll say this to people, it's not perfect, but if you ever look at a financial statement, look at your balance sheet, you'll notice that you have cash in the bank. Look at your accumulated surplus, the numbers will almost be the same. Why? Because the accumulated surplus is my reserves and cash that's there for rainy days that I have in the bank that's invested. And so, because of timing and things like that, it's not always perfect, but it's pretty much that shows with money. And I've had some administrators say, how do I know I have this money in reserves? Just take a look at your bank account, and normally it syncs up pretty good. Okay? So you want to just recognize it from that perspective. We'll go over that in the financial statements, but you want to read that. And if your restricted surplus and unrestricted surplus are unhealthy and very low, that's one of the big indicators I look at when I'm doing a strat plan. Do you have enough money in the bank to fund your future dreams and visions for this community? Are we going to be able to afford the projects that are required for the consultants? Are we going to be able to afford the capital assets that are required to maybe become a recreation hub, whatever it might be? You want to understand your accumulated surplus and maybe the challenges there. And this also ties to reserve planning. So there you go. Again, it shows how much of the surplus is actually available. Quickly, because I'm getting bored, but again, and then we have reserves and deferred revenue. Okay. Now, everybody knows what deferred revenue is. You get grants, you haven't spent them, then it's basically deferred revenue, which means it's a liability because it's money that's been given to you, but you haven't done anything with it yet. So it's on your financial statement in your disclosures as deferred revenue. You received it from the province or the federal government, but you haven't spent it yet, so it's a liability concerns expectations. That's deferred revenue, is it? And then you have your reserves. To me, I really like looking at the reserves. And why do I like looking at the reserve disclosures? Is because in the reserve disclosures in the financial statements, usually the municipality will say, we have reserves for fire services equipment, a reserve for parks equipment, a reserve for new multi-purpose rec facility. I can kind of have a fair idea of what that municipality wants to do from a capital asset replacement and maybe even future value add project perspective. It gives me an idea of what they're planning for. If they don't have that, then I also know that they don't have very good plans going forward. Your reserves should be segmented somewhat. This is a bit controversial. Some don't agree with that, but they're wrong. Having good reserve categories that make sense, that are good for plans for the future, is a good thing. That doesn't mean that maybe plans change and you redesignate reserves, but having that in your disclosures is key. So again, look at your financial statements. There should be something there that tells you where your money's at and what it's planned for. Okay. Employee benefit obligations, again, liabilities related to vacation, pensions, other post-employment benefits. I'm not sure if any of you have this problem, but South Dakota, we did have a problem once the auditors came in and said, you have a ton of overtime, where people have all this overtime, and your current policy is that people can just carry it over indefinitely. We had some staff that literally had 6 months to 8 months of overtime, overtime in the bank. And a lot of them said, well, it's because I want to take my last year of work off before retirement. All to the side, they're planning for it, right? So they just were banking. And the auditor said, no, it's a liability. You got to get this liability off the books. So there's lots of money that got paid out, and that was a big deal at the time. So you want to make sure you look at your employee benefit obligations. This, in private business, kills a lot of businesses, right? Because of their liabilities related to vacation, pensions, and things like that. Us, mostly our pensions are usually at the provincial level. It's not municipal, but these are the types of things you want to be at least aware of. Okay? And again, important understanding of future financial performance. Here's a fun thing that's about Alberta financial statements. It's different than Saskatchewan. Every administrator's salary has to be posted in the financial statements. So I like to be a little bit sneaky, and I like to look at what the salaries are for all the municipalities, but all kidding aside, it's a good comparable. It's a good comparable. It allows us to look at, like, what are we, are we fair? Are we being transparent with our council salaries and those types of things? And so granted obligations, salaries, those types of things possibly will be in the financial statements as well. Okay? Moving on, commitments and contingencies. So legal obligations. Have we got a lawsuit against us? Do we have, what's a good one? Contractual commitment. Landfill issues, right? Landfill obligations. All that kind of stuff should be in the notes. So it's very likely that your municipality possibly has significant financial obligations that you need to be aware of. Now, we are, again, a product of the federal and provincial levels of government. So on occasion, there might be times where they say you have to fund with actual money your landfill obligation, or a piece of land that's maybe been contaminated by fuels and things like that. That can be very expensive for municipalities. So if you're an administrator moving to a new municipality, or if you're working at your own, you want to make sure you take a look at those, because you're always going to be a little bit on the nervous side about if the province ever says you have to actually fund and pay for it. So just be aware of that, okay? Oh, I gotta be quiet again. It's okay, not to be out, it's fine. Again, critical for risk management and planning, obviously, because again, what are we there for? We're there to keep the municipality safe. We're there as trusted advisors, we're there to develop relationships with council, we're there to make their visions happen, but we're also there to mitigate risk for our municipalities as SAOs. That's risk with our staff, safety, financial, whatever measures. Okay? Government transfers, distinguish between recognizing for grants, again, all those kinds of things. You all know about that stuff, so we want. Okay? Segment reporting, this one, again, I'll just let you know this one. This is one of my favorites. Why? I'm a finance guy, and I don't really understand municipal financial statements sometimes, because the top talks about here's our, here's our revenue, our taxes, whatever, and the bottom part is, and then here's this department, that department, this, and so I'm like, well, what's the total salaries? What's the total supplies and materials? What's the total whatever? And so in the notes, usually that's where it lies. So it'll be the financial statements of municipalities, usually expenses by department, revenue expenses by their operating levels, and then in the notes, then they kind of mold the statements together in an understandable way. So I like that one. I think it's important. Subsequent events will be in your notes, those events occurring after year end, but again, before the statements are finalized. And again, these could impact your decisions. Moving on. So tips for communicative disclosures. This is maybe more for your auditor than yourselves, but this is the thing I always would tell auditors when I would work through stuff is put it in plain language. I mean, your accountants, put it in language that our public will understand and that my council will understand. Because if you don't, then one, people aren't going to read them. Also, we're not going to understand them. And so make sure your notes are in plain language. Highlight key risks and implications for planning. So one of the things that I would always do at year end with council is after we looked at the financial statements, went through all the notes, I would provide a one-pager summary that would say, council, here's the key things that you need to know about this year's audit and maybe the challenges that we have, maybe from a debt capacity perspective, or maybe a legal obligation perspective, whatever. Here's your cheat sheet to talk to the public about our year-end audit and financial statements. I would do a summary of the notes and disclosures for my council once a year. Okay? And then link the disclosures to strategic and operational decisions. Remember, what I just talked about, unrestricted, restricted, surplus, I can match and link that to our capital plan. I can look at our debt management and I can link that to future capital needs. I can look at our investments and know that we're generating enough money that we can afford operations going forward because we're taking care of our revenue. There's all kinds of things that link up together, so you want to at least make the effort to have that fundamental understanding. Okay? Great stuff. I'm quick to get you out of here. That's it for disclosures. Really fun? Good? Good? Okay? Okay. Is there any questions about disclosures? Okay, moving on. Now the next one is, I was asked to do financial reporting fundamentals. I have to say this, I'm just going to say this. I have to admit, when I opened up and I was asked, Tim, could you do the council and admin relationship? I thought, there's some great things. And then do disclosure and financial things. I went, everybody's going to be that's so fun. But anyways, it's important stuff, so I get it. So we'll get you through this part. Disclosures is key. It's strategic. It's good information. Remember, our role is to be that trusted advisor. Council wants you to be an expert, so take the time to learn them. And I'll bet you that some of you in here will run back to the office and read the notes and disclosures for the first time in your career. I know it, so I'm not going to ask you to put up your hand. But I'm sure that some of you may do that. So we'll take a look, because they are financial reporting. Okay? I spent my career as a budget guy, and I'm proud of that. I love budget. And a lot of people don't. Budget is very stressful. It's very pressure-based. It's all about balancing things. But I also thought over time I learned it was about making things happen. And I can remember being at Saskatchewan County, and that we would have the recreation director come in and present the budget. We'd have the transportation engineering guy come in and present the budget. We'd have the fire department come in and present the budget. And I got to the point where, again, I didn't really hear about the numbers. I heard about all these wonderful things they were doing that tied to the numbers. And so I started to recognize that the numbers were really about all these amazing and special things we're doing for people each and every day. And that made me feel good about what I did as a budget officer. It made me feel motivated to become very strategic in finding innovative ways to finance and fund operations and capital plans and all kinds of things. And I'll give you a bit of an aside. If you don't know Strathcona County, where I worked, in 1998, it had gone through 5 straight years of 0% tax dollar increases. It had gone through 5 straight years of layoffs of staff. It was very much a place of negative culture and a place that was targeted by the City of Edmonton as a place for amalgamation because it was unsustainable according to the City of Edmonton. Oldest bus fleet in Western Canada, true story, a guy that was the transportation bus director, he would actually buy buses from the City of Vancouver for $1. He would bring them to Edmonton and he would actually weld sheet metal on the sides, and those were the buses that we had in actually Sherwood Park in Saskatchewan County. No urban transit, just commuter transit to Edmonton. We were really on a path to not being a municipality anymore. Bill Sutherland came up and put this projector, one of those old projectors, remember those ones where you write on them and they would project on the wall? Right? Yeah, so we had one of these projectors and he wrote down recreation, economic development, workplace, respect an employer of choice to attract the best staff, financial strategy, 5 or 6 key things. It was the first time I saw a strategic plan. And what he said during that meeting, he also said, I would like to introduce you, remember what I said earlier, to the leaders of our community. Council stood up and said, this is their plan, and we're going to make these things happen. What I didn't know at that time is that I was at the part of the beginning of a municipality that was dying to become one of the richest municipalities in all of North America. Within 10 years, he achieved that. And how do we achieve that? Through municipal processes and investment of infrastructure, investment and attraction of worldwide industry, relationships with the provincial government, investment in recreation assets that made the place attractive to live. So all of a sudden, the municipality went from about 60,000 to 100,000 in about 15 years. And so what I recognized is that finance really had an important role in making municipalities sustainable and successful. And an investment in infrastructure and things like industrial parks brought in money that allowed for amazing services. Now, my son's back there, 22 years old. We live in a municipality that's now, and I think Saskatoon and many municipalities are like this today, but it's like a virtual playground now, where before it was dying. And it was really because, again, of financial processes tied to budget and then ultimately reporting, because we were always held accountable. So reporting is important, and financial statements are, again, that interpretation of how we're doing from a strategic planning perspective. And that's where you can get excited about financial statements. Maybe I'm not so boring up here. Is when you start to understand that those statements are really nothing more, or they're actually a measure of how we're doing in terms of making our community a better place and generating better community. So when you think about that, does this have a little red thing? I don't think it is. If you look at that, you have your strategic plan, then you have your action plan. Remember, I always say you got to have actions that tie to your strat plan. We then have business plans, but then we have budgets. And the budget process, basically, is the gatekeeper of decisions of council. So council's going to say, okay, here's our strat plan, here's the things we want to do, and then remember, Bill up at the screen with this little highlighter and putting on the screen, recreation economic, that resulted in roads, resulted in professional development for staff so we could learn how to do things properly. It resulted in a new recreation facility that was in the books on our capital plan that eventually got approved in the budget to get us to where council wanted our vision to be for our community. So we improved our budget processes, and that was a big part of that. And that's why I was really tired for a long time, because I had to work weekends and nights, and it was just a crazy time. But I'm my career, I'm very proud of. But also tied to reports and financial statements. And that's why when you look at financial statements, they're not really that boring. They tell a story. If you look at your financial statements today as opposed to 10 years ago, it will represent a new recreation facility, a new fire hall, better snow clearing, better roads. It really does mean something. And so I'm trying to get you excited about numbers. How am I doing? But all kidding aside, they really do tell a story, and it tells a special story. And we often, municipalities evolve. And we think that the municipalities have always been this way, but realistically, it takes time. When I was a kid, a skate park was the steps at school. The spray park was, I would go in my trunks in the middle of the street. Once a year I was all excited, the fire department would come, they open up the fire hydrant, they'd blow water up, we could run through that, we'd get blown halfway across the street. I'd come home with scabs all over me, my parents would, what the heck happened to you? But imagine the liabilities today, but that was a spray park in my day, right? So things evolve over time, and our financial statements represent that. So you want to understand your financial statements, you want to understand the reporting process. It really does mean something, measurement means something. We also want to recognize that we have stakeholders. We have people that we're accountable to. So when we're looking at the financial statements, we're looking at our reporting processes, we're looking at our measurement. We want to recognize we're there to be accountable, and I like accountability. I'm proud of presenting reports that mean something to our councils and then ultimately our public. And one of the things that, again, this is something I learned from George, he said, always remember when you're presenting to council, you're presenting to the public. That's something that really always hit me. It got to where I was like, okay, get the jargon out, get my information out, make it a bit jazzy. Unfortunately, I had a bunch of slides here that are in my normal stuff that I'm always sitting on my desk at work at home. But stuff I created in the early 2000s to present budgets and financial reports and financial statements that look really visual that actually were interesting. So I started to recognize that presenting to the council was to the public, and I want them to actually be interested in what we're doing. And so I started to think about who's our statement users, senior governments, the federal government, the provincial government, the peer governments, grant recipients, suppliers, lenders, clients, and then ultimately the big one, ratepayers and council. Right? So you want to make sure that when you're looking at your financial statements, you're looking at your processes, you're recognizing we're looking at the people we're accountable to. And here's the thing again, keep yourself out of trouble. Always think about what is it our client, our ratepayers, our council wants from us. And if I look at best practices and I look at innovative ways of presenting this information, they're going to be happy with me. That's going to make my council happy, and that's going to make me stress-free, right? Because everybody is in a good place because we're doing good from a financial statement reporting perspective. So this is important. Understand when it comes to reporting, understand your legislation. There's going to be big parts within the legislation. And here's the thing, I've read, believe it or not, every legislation in every province in Canada because I have to. It's my job. And because I'm an educator. But the big thing is trust me, there's nuances, but they're all pretty close to the same, believe it or not. There's nuances that make each other different, and some of them are somewhat what I would call material, but on the most part, a municipality is a municipality. Where I really recognize this is when I was sitting in Kiev in front of a beautiful group of Ukrainian mayors and elected officials and presenting on municipal government in Kiev, Ukraine, many years ago. It was a beautiful place. And just as an aside, the thing that they were most interested in when I was there was property taxes. And why is they don't have property taxes in Ukraine? They just have income tax. It goes to the central government, and they wanted to have property tax so their municipalities could be independent because of corruption. 20% of budgets in municipal government in Ukraine are for payoffs. True story. At the time when I was there. And basically the income would go to the federal government, and the federal government would decide who got the money as municipalities based on who's paying me. That was really hard for me to take, and so the mayors and administrators would talk to me about how do we get away from doing that, right? And it was again through the financial process, property taxes, things like that, reporting. They took me to a recreation facility, and they showed me in the facility, and it was empty. And I was like, this place is beautiful. They said, yeah, it's only meant for certain people, the rich, the Russian oligarchy. right? So things like that are important to note, that finance can actually make a big difference. Legislation and proper relationships with our government, and I think it's usually pretty good, is really key. But you want to understand what that means. Budget, investment, borrowing, loans and guarantees, general matters, annual statements and auditors report. As administrators, you got to know your legislation. It makes a difference. It doesn't mean you need to know it in depth. You're not going to get up here and teach a class on it, whatever it might be, but it's really key and important that you know it, because your councils may have questions at some point, right? So, why are they important, financial statements? Because it's for management information, supports decision making, right? Here's the thing. When we would do reports that went to our executive and then ultimately our council, it always went to the executive team first that I worked for. I mentioned I was part of the executive team. But it went to the executive team, why? Why would they want to see the numbers before it went to council? Because maybe they could make a decision or change the ship direction to support us, maybe not going over in certain areas. Or maybe it was an interpretation of, when they saw something high, in a certain area, it meant we had a fire, maybe, or maybe we had an infrastructure failure, or maybe we had a criminal investigation or something that cost money. So it was information for the executives so that they could make decisions. So your financial statements and your reporting process is not just a numbers game, it's an action game. It's reports and information and financial statements is about management information, so you can make informed decisions on what your council should do and make recommendations to them. And so management information supports your decision making. It also updates financial status and position. Our councils like to hear how we're doing because they're accountable to the public. And what does the public always say? We're not getting anything for our taxes, right? I mean, it's not true. Or you're overtaxing me, or you're spending money in a way that's not sustainable, or whatever it might be, or not responsible. And 99% of the time they're wrong. Most municipalities, almost all municipalities I work with over time, are very responsible when it comes to financial sustainability and the way that they manage the public purse. And so, again, you want to make sure when you're looking at your statements and your financials that you're recognizing it's really about updating your council on financial position, because again, we're updating the public while we're sending information to council, right? If we have an issue, we want to make sure we tell them quick, right? I once had an administrator come to me for advice, and he said, Tim, if I tell council about this issue that we have, I'm probably going to get fired. And I thought about what he said, and I said, if you don't tell council what you told me, you'll get fired and you'll never get another job in this business. So make the decision and make the right one. And he ultimately made the right one, and council was okay with it. They said, thank you, that's good information, because it was a mistake that one of his team made, and he didn't get fired, everything was okay. So it's one of those things, you want to make sure you're very honest and transparent with the council when it comes to financial information and reporting, okay? It's really key. Again, public information is about transparency, and again, legislative requirements mean it's audible. And audible means that we can believe the numbers that we are seeing here. Auditors are not looking for fraud, they're not looking for material mistake necessarily, but they are looking to make sure that the financial statements are representative of the activities and actions that have occurred in the year. Right? So timing is important. Is it accurate? Or do we have all the utility bills? Do we have all the statements? Do we collect all the revenue? You want to make sure that the statements are representative. Rule number one in accounting 101. Okay? I notice my kids fall asleep back there. You should be paying attention to this. You're going to be a CPA one day. But all kidding aside, again, I like auditable information because I know when I'm looking at those statements that they're very accurate. I can trust what I'm reading. Okay? So that's really key to know. You want to make sure that you understand this, that there's three key streams of finance you want to be aware of when you're thinking about financial statements and reporting. There's going to be financial reporting and audit, obviously. The reports, quarterly reporting is to me the best practice. Monthly reporting, by the way, and some of you may do this, where we have a monthly financial report that goes to council. You spend a lot of time, I know as administrators, finance is a lot of work. You go over all that information, some of the councils want to go through the whole check run and everything else. Waste of time. Once a quarter, to me, is the best practice for financial reporting to councils because, again, it takes too much time and you're too busy doing other things. If you're so busy just doing financials every month, it's basically just turning over reports. And if anything's going to happen that's really going to be problematic for a council, you'll let them know before the quarter's up, but if not, a good quarterly report to me is the best practice and it's the right level of timing that council should see financials. It's once every 3 months. Okay? I think that's the right level of getting the information to council. Budgeting is obviously something that's very important. So reporting is about the history, but also helps us with management information to make decisions. Budgeting is about the future, and then management reporting is about history and future to influence decisions. Now remember, I was a finance guy for 10 years of my career. I spent a lot of time doing budgets. I spent a lot of time helping with reporting. But once that was done, it was out of my hair, and I was ready to do the next budget. It wasn't until I became a CAO that I really started to realize the value of the budget information and the reporting information, because I used it for management reporting. I would meet with my departments, even though I only took it to council once every 3 months. I met with my departments once a month, and we'd go over the actuals and the financials and all those things, and I would ask them questions, and it would tell me everything about the operational issues that were going on in the field, right? And that's my responsibility to make sure council's aware if they ask me questions about those things. And so management reporting is one of the key things you want to recognize when you're thinking about finance as well, okay? I'm going to whip through some of these. Lenders, clients, suppliers. The reporting cycle, all of you know about that, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Now, financial statements. Now, I'm not going to, I know a lot of you already know about a lot of the stuff, but we have, again, like any private industry, we have a balance sheet, we have income statement, different names, but we have these things. So we have that, and then we have statement of changes, and then we have the disclosures. We want to have a good idea of how the money works. So as I mentioned before, if I'm looking at, for example, the financial position, and we see my cash and equivalents, and we see my accounts receivable, my investments, what am I looking for? Do I have enough cash to manage and meet our obligations from a service perspective and a capital asset perspective if we have obligations in our capital budget? And do we have money in the bank for investments and our reserves funded? Now, if you have audited financial statements, 99.9999% chance the money on your statements are right and you're funded. So it'll tell you that story. But you want to be able to have at least that fundamental understanding of looking at your cash and knowing what does that cash mean from the other side. So it's not just my bank account, it's representative, it's funding my operations, it's funding my reserves, it's funding my future capital, and there's deferred revenues in the bank as well. Okay? And I want to make sure, here's a little bit of a hint, I also call my bank and say, I want you to put it into an investment of some kind, so I'm getting some type of return. So many municipalities that I've worked with over the years have say an account that's generating almost zero interest. If you call your bank, you can be as safe as leaving it in basically any account, and they'll invest it in things like treasury bills and bonds and things like that are completely 100% safe, and you'll get at least a return on your money. So make sure that you do that, okay? Your liabilities is something you need to look at. So accounts payable, accrued liabilities, deferred revenue, we know that what that is now, is the grants. Liability for contaminated sites, again, non-cash issues. So when you're looking at the liability side, you want to recognize there's cash issues and there's non-cash issues. What are my real liabilities versus my accounting liabilities? Contaminated sites, sure, it's a liability, but until the province or the federal government says you must fund this, which would bankrupt a lot of municipalities in Canada, I'm not going to have to worry about it. At least I know it's there, right? I know it's a problem. Yeah, but looking at my deferred revenue, whoa, that's a liability. Wait a second, that's grants sitting in the bank. It's just deferred revenue because I haven't put it to an obligation yet. So it's a liability, but it's not something I have to worry about. I might look at my real liabilities and then I look at my disclosures and maybe I find a lawsuit. Maybe I find something that we owe from that perspective and everything else. Okay? Then we have our long-term debt, which we all know about, and our net debt. So our net debt is basically an indicator, not a perfect indicator, doesn't always work perfect, but it's an indicator of our ability to meet our future obligations. That's it. So that's what net debt is. So I'm looking at my financial statements, I can look at a municipality, I can get a pretty good feel of if they're good financial shape or not by just looking at this page. Can they fund their services? Can they fund their future capital? Can they fund, maybe the strategic plan? I can tell by that net debt number. Okay? Then we have our TCA and inventory. And this is, remember the thing I said before? Holy cow! Look at our non-financial assets. We're rich. Go sell the road. Go try to sell. the old backhoe or whatever it might be. Right? There's really no financial value in those non-financial assets, so don't get fooled by that. But then you look at your inventory prepaid tax and you look at your accumulated surplus. And then that's where you start looking for, okay, I want to understand what my restricted and unrestricted surplus is because that's the real money on my balance sheet, okay? So that's the kind of things you want to know from a financial statement. Okay? Then we get to This is the one that I said annoyed me. So this is basically our income statement. So the almost the balance sheet. So here's the revenue, taxes, government transfers, and then we go to where it's general government, economic and business development, community services, and tourism. This bugs me because it doesn't line up with the top. The top and the bottom, it's like, okay, we're going to show our revenues and by basically revenue type, and then we show our expenses by business entity. Now, in the note disclosures, it will show the supplies, materials, employee salaries, and things like that. So that's important. But you want to, that's just to give you a good feel. And the reason they do that, just so everybody's aware, in municipal financial services, there's this thought that we want to get a good idea of what people are getting for what they pay for. So we have our general revenue, because again, there's usually very little fees and charges that are specific to certain areas, unless you have transit or big recreation. But for the most part, the property taxes are general and then are allocated to the services that we have. So it's almost like a mini service inventory. Recreation, policing, transit, whatever it might be. Okay? So that's the way you look at that. Then we have our tangible capital assets, transfers, a bunch of accounting jargon, fun stuff that we go through to kind of tie this stuff. I'm so glad I've done my accounting courses, but he has to go through it now, so it's going to be good for him. And then again, we have our annual surplus. Now, here's the thing about financial statements. Get really good at your annual surplus because it's a really great opportunity to fund reserves, to fund future obligations. Do not, whatever you do, allow your taxpayers to say that your surplus isn't overtaxed. There's always a good explanation of why you had a surplus. Maybe we didn't have the snow that we thought we were going to have. Maybe we are behind on a project. Maybe we had a bunch of turnover, so we had a bunch of what we call salary slippage, where we had unfunded positions, wherever it might be. Make sure that you can explain to the public and say that if we gave the money back, it would put us into a fiscal deficit, because next year we want to make sure that we get those things done. Your surplus is a great way of funding future things. If you don't have this, definitely have a year-end surplus policy. And a year-end surplus policy should tell council this is how we allocate year-end surplus. At least 50%, in my opinion, should go to asset management and capital replacement. So if we have any surplus, automatically the municipality that I worked in, a few of them, because I put this policy in place in many places, we want to make sure that it's automatic and it goes to funding future challenges, because we're always underfunded in asset management. So there's that, and then maybe a few other things, whatever else, right? Special funding. So make sure that you look at your surplus and that. Okay. Moving on. Boring. Net financial assets, liabilities, net financial assets, net debt, as I mentioned before, when you take a look at that, it's just basically representing your obligation to get things done. So that's a good thing of what net debt means. And so now you know, you can forget about positive balance, enough liquid assets on hand to pay for future services. If you have a negative balance, future revenue needs to be increased for us to be able to pay. If I look at a municipal financial statement and I see a negative balance in their net debt, I see municipalities in trouble financially. And I've seen, in Alberta at least anyways, a few municipalities that dissolved because of their issues with net debt. Right? Either they lost a big industry revenue player, maybe they made mistakes, maybe they overspent on certain capital assets, thinking if we build it, they will come. Do you have any skate parks in Saskatchewan that are repurposed? Basically subdivisions that nobody actually built any houses in, so the kids just skate park in them. All these roads with no. So we have a lot of those in Alberta, and so those are basically the types of things that put municipalities into a situation of dissolve and or bankruptcy. Anyway, net future. Boring. Financial warning signs, operating expenses exceeding revenues by more than 5%, large mid-year variances from actual budget revenues, inadequate or late financial reports, reserves used to balance the budget. There's lots of things that you want to have in your toolbox and knowledge base from a financial perspective that will tell you, are we in trouble? In my new administrator municipality, oh, wait a second, we're using reserves consistently to cover off our budget deficit. We are constantly late on our financial reports. Well, what's that mean? What's going on there? They don't know financial statements. Lots of municipalities in Alberta right now are late on financial statements. My team is working with a client right now to fix an issue with one client where their auditor resigned, and so we're helping support that. But those are the kinds of things that tells you there might be something wrong. We want to have those things understood as a financial, as an administrator. And then a few more red flags: debt servicing exceeding 10% of revenues, qualified auditor's opinions. That's what you don't want, is a qualified opinion saying there's a problem here. Auditors will do that on occasion. Internal control weaknesses, all those kinds of fun things, and large turnover of staff in the financial team, right? Those things you want to worry about. 9 times out of 10, when does fraud get caught? Does anybody know when? When someone leaves, exactly, or goes on holiday. The finance person never wants to go on holiday. Why? Because then they'll find out that they're signing the same check that's going in their bank account, right? We're working with a municipality right now where a financial officer created 6 accounts, 6 employees that were fictitious and had checks going to them for 6 months. He escaped and the RCMP are after him now. Apparently he's in BC. They say working in a municipality somewhere, which blows my mind. But he got caught with about 6 months of payment for 6 employees to himself over time. So really interesting situation. How they figure out? Because he got sick. He got sick, and so they had somebody else come in, and they're like, well, who's these employees, right? Those kinds of things. It happens. So we want to make sure that you're aware of those 6 things. So yada yada yada, and there we go. Hey, I got through it. So I didn't see anybody fall asleep. Maybe 1 or 2 of you. So any questions at all? No. If I could, I know that you're all really excited to get out the door. I'm going to let you go in about 30 seconds. I just want to say thank you so much for the patience that you had for me today. I did this presentation off the cuff last night, got through it a little bit. I want to say thank you to my son for taking care of the camera work and everything else. It was a real pleasure. I'm not going to be doing this stuff so much anymore. I've decided to make a bit of a change in our approach at Bloom. But I just want to say it was a real pleasure to come to Saskatchewan. I was excited. First time my son's ever been here, and I told him just wait to see. You can't wait till you see how flat it is. The sunsets are beautiful. Anyway, any questions? Thank you so much.